Okay, well, thanks for just carving out some time that was thrown at you, and why don't we jump into some prayer quickly. We are under the gun because I did not recharge batteries, so we're looking at some short window time. We are recording this just if others, well, I'll send it in an email. I'm not going to post it on the website at all, but I'll send it to those who attend in an email, and they can watch this and listen to it. For those who are absent. So let's open up with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for gathering us. And Lord, so much in the book of Acts is the unfolding of the apostolic mission which you yourself granted the apostles when you told them to go into all the world and make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And so, Lord, as we gather together at a family meeting and kind of talk about what seems right to us, this is a phrase that's used in the book of Acts. And yes, you intervened miraculously on occasion, but I think you bless and are pleased when brothers and sisters dwell in unity and they do what seems right, given your word, given their context, and given all of these other variables. We ask that you be with us, Lord, in our discussion and our ideas and whatever we conclude, if anything. In Christ's name, amen. Amen. Okay, I want to start off kind of like Presbyterians talk about baptism. Baptism doesn't save you. And they're also hung up on baptism as a means of grace. I was reading literature because Carolyn and Jeff wanted some instruction, and I looked at these things, and that's the first thing that comes out of some of their mouths. A denial of baptism. Don't worry, you don't believe too much about baptism. Okay, I'm going to start off with a Presbyterian denial. I don't really know what the correct answers are here that I want to chat about and have a family meeting about. But I am convicted by some principles. And those principles now need to get hashed out with the rubber meeting the road. Here's one principle. This is by a theologian who was president of Moody Bible Institute, who also went on to become the executive leader of the Salvation Army when it was fully biblical, I think. I don't know what it is now, I must confess. And he said this: there's nothing in the Bible that tells the world to come to the church. But there's everything in the Bible that tells the church to go out into the world. That is powerful. And that is the only thing I have to give you with surety and conviction. Now, he's equivocating on the word church here, because he's talking about, I think, the church building primarily. But even if he were talking about the gathering, there really is nothing in Scripture that says to the unbeliever, come to the church and hear. That, brothers and sisters, is what separates the two covenants. With types and shadows, the land of promise, a piece of soil in the Middle East, with Jerusalem and the temple representing all that was to come in fulfillment of Jesus Christ. That, in types and shadows, God said to the world, come to Jerusalem, and the Gentiles will be blessed. Come, and you will hear the wisdom of righteousness from my people. And then Christ comes, and then the resurrection and his ascension, and he literally inverts the whole paradigm from the old covenant to the new. The old covenant was come, and the new covenant is go. And conspicuously absent is the importance of Jerusalem in the book of Acts. It's just like not there. What were they doing? Playing poker? I mean, it's just not important to God's mission as he rolls out his plan, as he speaks to them to go. So there's the one thing I do know. The one thing I don't know is, what does that mean for us? Now, if you have your bulletin, Nate, I don't know, kind of rough this morning. before you, which is really quite general and broad because we're having some QuickBooks issues and stuff like that. But I'll read it to you, unless you've already read it. Have you already read it? No. Yes. Some of you have. Okay. Due to transition and vacations, we are not able to give you an itemization of income and expenses right now. We hope to get this to you by next week. Maybe really do. However, our opening bank balance of January 1st, 2018 and the balance of our checking account on July 31st, 2018 has a negative cash flow deficit spending of $6,074. This includes Nate as full-time, by the way. This is the deficit we've run for 7 months. Divide that figure by 7, we're running a monthly deficit of $868 with me as full-time. Now that can shock some of you that don't follow our numbers regularly because finances are just not your cup of tea, and I get that. But keep in mind that when we stepped out in faith and with risk, the pastor's fund was to have been depleted in October of 2018 to a zero balance. Right now, the pastor's fund is set to deplete in November of 2019. Was it worth the risk? That's for you to decide. There's another year in the pastor's fund. But pastor's fund is an accounting line on a piece of paper. The monies that we take in and the deficit spending that we're incurring with me as full-time, including the pastor's fund and all these funds, is this much total divided by 7 is $868 a month. Now, if giving doesn't increase, and if giving doesn't decrease, and if expenses don't increase, then we could continue with me as a full-time status close to 40 months. Close. 39 months. Now, at that point in time, our cash in the checking account would be a big goose egg. And we would have $10,000 in the high-yield checking account at another bank that we have to our name. And this does not include the deacon account. The deacon account is marginal at the point. So, anyway, so I just wanted to give you the big picture. We're in Egypt, in the desert of sin. Not sinning, it's a proper name. There's no mysterious meaning here that I know of. But we are sent here by God. And I do think I have biblical grounds to interpret that God is enacting because we're faithful in the preaching and the means of grace. And so I think God has been gracious and kind to us. And I think the pastor's fund got extended a year. And I think this is good to hold this for almost 40 months, which is over 3 years. I think that's a bit of good news. Even though this monthly deficit might be intimidating, scary, and what do we do? And so, what I said here is that here's something else that I think is helpful. I see us having 2 broad choices. Okay? One is minimal spending, discretionary spending, and the other is maximal. That's 2 ends of 2 continuums, right? Minimal and maximal. And then there's, of course, everything in between, which is probably where we're at. Now, I remember in my family, we were having some issues financially, and I suggested to Susan, because I stumbled onto something, a little, I'm going to erase this. If you want to write the numbers down, you can. It's printed in the bulletin. So, And like I said, next week I hope we can have the category breakdown of income and expenses. But I was quite pleased with what I was fearing to be almost a dire situation. Okay, so a big N and a small n. A big W and a small w. N stands for needs, and W stands for wants. And I said, you know what, hon? What we ought to do is, I found this thing, and it really makes sense to me. We ought to put our financial picture on this chart. She said, hey, we don't have any discretionary spending. And I said, well, that's kind of maybe true, but I wanted to help her out with this. So I said, okay, how about this? I've had a beer a day for over 30 years. I've missed very few of them. And I said, I think we do have discretionary spending. We're going financially backwards, but I said to her, I bet if we start putting our financial life in these 4 categories and squares, we would find out that we're spending money on some big desired wants, maybe even some small desired wants, and I couldn't bring myself before the Lord to put this anywhere other than where it deserves, which is a small W. I tried to justify it with maybe a big W or even a small N. You know, it's kind of stress control. And we had a whole slew of these things, and suddenly we started listing these things, and this thing bounced this one over to here, and this one bounced this thing over to there, and before we knew it, we maybe shouldn't have had the discretionary income that we were spending because we were going backwards, but we certainly found out we did and were spending discretionary income that we shouldn't have. So, anyway, given that, I think it's kind of a cool little chart because I think spending money, just like places where you don't have resources, it reveals things. And so when we start putting things on this 4-pie chart of big needs, small needs, big wants, and small wants, then I think we start engaging and owning our values. So, I remember saying on many occasions that the session would not act if somebody wanted to put 4 angels on the corner of our building. But the session would probably contact that person, if knowable, and say, we don't feel that that is a just and proper use of our resources. And I use that as an extreme, though artistic and beautification is a legitimate value, but I was hoping I was somewhat safe here. But if we were to put on this map things that we are spending money on, or things that we want to spend money on, I bet you we would start filling these things if you suggested it and I asked you where it should go over here. And then I bet you when this thing started filling up, you would start looking at this big W and start putting some things in the small w, and maybe and then suddenly things would start to move, because when you see a gestalt, when you see the big picture with everything on it, you go, wow. And I had to face down the fact that I love beer. I mean, I do. And I do not abuse my alcohol. And I love beer. Did I say that? I do. I really do. But I had to stare that one down. Now, so, as I look at where we are at, and we are going backwards on average of $800 and some a month, and yes, we could drive it to zero in about 40 months, but of course no one would do that. We would be acting much earlier than 40 months if that happened. But what do we do with our situation? We can hunker down and do absolute minimum and identify discretionary expenses and try to eliminate them and try to shrink that $800 and some, and we could be totally committed to that. I have one problem with that. Our institutional survival is not and should not be our ultimate concern. And to engage in a little bit of risk to extend the kingdom, which lowers our 40-month window to however long we choose to spend, I think is the way to go. Somewhere on that continuum of maximum and minimum is where we need to go and trust God if we think what we're doing here is what God wants to be done. And I think it is. When I ask us, who are we? What are our distinctives? We could say we're liturgical, but that would be not quite true because there are other liturgical churches here. We could say that we are historically Orthodox, or historically Christian. That's just another way to say that. We are a liturgical, historical Orthodox church, and then that would come closer to the truth. Because of the liturgical churches that I know of, and I don't know them all, many have forsaken the authority of Scripture. And so I think we stand unique here in Torrington. Now, we could put a wig on Herb and put him up there with a bass guitar. I don't know if he plays. And we could go the contemporary route with drums in here, and we could try to compete with the young generational attraction in Torrington. That being Sunrise, that being North Hills, and that being New Life or New Way or whatever that's called over there with our horseshoer. But I think even if we had the resources, and Herb played beautifully Black Sabbath, I think we are in what I call, regarding contemporary singing, we're in what's called market saturation. And I think if another group of people came in to try to do what Sunrise did 10 years ago or whenever they came, I don't think it would fly. It might create some unpleasant shuffling and buffet-type Christianity, and then the last man stands wins, I guess. But I think this market of contemporary singing is saturated. And I don't think we should go there. Okay. I thought he said, honey, that he didn't have anything to say. Okay, well, maybe I lied. So, I don't think contemporary is a niche for us. I think we're historically Orthodox and we're liturgical. And I think our niche is going to be finding a way to market, and I'm not saying this in contradistinction to the Spirit of God. When Paul came to Philippi, they got up in the morning and they said, where are the places people gather to pray? Where can we go and get a hearing? When Paul was in Athens, he went to Mars Hill. That was the place where people came with new ideas of philosophy and religion, and you could speak. And people came by the thousands. I've got a friend who just took a picture of himself preaching on Mars Hill. It's freaking awesome. There's a problem. No one's there. He's here with the Bible on Mars Hill. No one's there. We have to find the equivalent Mars Hill in Goshen County. Where is it? We could try some street preaching. I mean, I'm challenged by Spurgeon. Spurgeon was the prince of preachers over in England. He's a Baptist Reformed guy. He says open-air speakers calling, the open-air speaker's calling is as honorable as it is arduous, as useful as it is laborious. God alone can sustain you in it, but with Him at your side, you will have nothing to fear. If 10,000 rebels were before you and a legion of devils in every one of them, you need not tremble. More is he than he that is against you. It's Charles Spurgeon in the 19th century. Now, the question is open-air preaching on the corner of Torrington or Glen Road, is that a Mars Hill? Or is that a stumbling block of offense? Not because of the cross, but because of the So we need to ask ourselves where our Mars Hill is in Goshen County, and God help us. Well, one Mars Hill is advertising. You get something in the mail from somebody, you expect that in this culture. You may read it. My wife gets the gold director that says 30, 20, or 15%. She flips that thing every time. When it says 30, she's gone. Okay? That's a Mars Hill. Getting something in people's hands is a Mars Hill in a medium. All right. I've spoken too much. I hopefully have primed the pump. I hope you kind of know what we're talking about. But let me get just one more thing started here. This is going to be confidential, circulated just to our own people, and I'll tell them it's confidential. Now, here's 4 things that I'm just throwing out. Air conditioning. We put a cooling unit on the second heater furnace in the basement in preparation for, to save us money, if we wanted to put air conditioning in the basement. That's there, it's primed. That's on our radar. I would love to have air conditioning in the basement if we need it. I don't know that it's been really tested. I don't know that it's been tested. The house next door, don't know anything about it, we're not going to push it. There was a public statement that made me say, it's all going to be them if there's going to be anything there. Basement flooring. Greg Blomberg says, is there anywhere I can stand that doesn't creak? And he was laughing. That needs to be done. Carpet in the sanctuary is blue-green, and if you lift up underneath, it's dissolving in crumbles. Now, I'm not advocating any of these, but I'm trying to go, well, what would be on people's minds that are on my minds that one could do to this building? But in principle, the session is in agreement that I think we need to take a minimalist viewpoint, a minimalist posture toward the physical plant of this building. I think the session would prefer that we do none of these. Now, the session's not going to stand in the way of a mass of people that are set to do something, because that's not who we are. I just want to convey to you the spirit of the session in terms of what they think we should do. So, now, I will turn it over to you. Yes?
Okay, I want to go right back to the first thing we had out there was the money. I'm a simple checkbook guy. If I made $168 in the hole, I have to go borrow money. Where's our money coming from? Where is money?
Good question.
I don't understand these spreadsheets you guys have.
We're not borrowing any money. This is cash on hand that we have in the bank.
Well, but you're in a hole. You say you're $800 in the hole.
Our expenses, our monthly expenses are higher than our monthly income, but our cash reserve enables us to go backwards and borrow from our cash, not borrowing credit.
But you're borrowing from our own stash.
Your savings account.
Well, it's our checking account.
Do you have a savings account?
We have a high-yield checking account with $10,000, which those figures that I put on were not, that figure was not, those monies were not included in there. That would extend it beyond 40 months.
Is the pastor's fund a separate account, or is it just included?
It's a line item, so therefore it's separate. But I wanted to make it simple, so it was thrown into the mix. We're running a deficit every month of $868.
On average.
on average,
From the money.
when we looked at 7 months from January through July of this year. Now, that could change. I did look at the prior 6 months. We were up past midnight. I was up around 5 or earlier, 4:30. Okay, so we've done the best we could with the time that we have. But we're not borrowing from anybody other than ourselves.
All these predictions you have is the income we're working with now. That can either go up or down,
Yes,
which will change everything.
yes.
Yes, if income goes down and expenses remain the same, we accelerate our zero balance. If income rises and expenses stay the same or lower or increase less than the increased giving, then we could be okay there too. Here's the deal. It's just like when you put me on full time. We knew that we were going to borrow from the pastor's fund. We knew that. It was a risk that I was in favor of. It was a risk that you all voted for. I expected more walk-in visitation, frankly, getting on this. You don't know how many people I run in, and I say I'm a pastor of Christ Reformed. Is that white building on the corner, isn't it? There's a lot of awareness to our presence. There's very little awareness about who we are.
Awareness of the outside, not the inside.
I'm sorry, Kurt?
There's awareness of the outside, not the inside.
Yes. Yes. And I know culturally you're raised to have a building. And I have no opinion on any intrinsic, well, I do have an opinion. A building's not intrinsically bad. A building can be used for and by God. But we, in principle, got this because it was somewhat gifted in sacrificial giving, and we committed ourselves to shore up the structure's necessities. And I think that's all we were committed to, and that's what our vision was. And I'm here to say, in the session, I think in principle, we've arrived. And we haven't grown. I don't know if we have a net loss or net gain, because some people have come, some people have left, and so on and so forth. But I think, who are we, where are we going, and how we're going to get there? I think we're on the right track, and I don't see any good alternative. But that's me repeating myself. More input. Yeah.
I agree with everything I'm hearing, but I think we need to spend a little bit of time how thankful we should be, because we spent a boatload of money, not only for our pastor, but for our building and everything. How did we ever get 39 months ahead in our checking account is beyond me. I mean, God has been smiling on us, or we wouldn't have that money.
I agree with you. As a matter of fact, I was asked the question, what would you do? Have you considered it if you had to go back to part-time status? And I wasn't ready for that question in terms of what I've been thinking about and my modus operandi. And it stopped me in my tracks. And then I kind of got scared because we haven't had a financial report of great detail for a couple months. And then I thought, well, maybe we're in a very bad situation here. And maybe I need to start thinking about what I'm going to do when full-time status is not going to happen. You?
Well, Earl is exactly right. We're not supposed to have 39 months at this point. That was the way our math was going when we started this. We were going to run out a lot sooner than that.
Yes.
Because I'm shocked, to tell you the truth, guys. I haven't looked at my financial statement, maybe there isn't one, but you know, the amount of money we spent is staggering, in the amount of work the able-bodied people here put in, and I'm not one of them, but is just amazing. And to have that many months, what I call cushion, shit, I'm thinking we might be looking at maybe 10, 15 days, I don't know.
Well, Nancy and Carolyn and I spent, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours yesterday, and I was pleasantly surprised, almost shocked at what the numbers revealed. And regardless of how QuickBooks is working right now, the numbers of your bank statement do not lie. And so we took January and July and derived an average backwards motion. And I was surprised where we could. Like I said, in 2 months, the pastor's fund was supposed to be at 0. And it's not. So that's really good news. And I think the overall picture is also encouraging and a sign that God is still saying, you're here, and I'm using you. And He's testing us, not in a bad way, but in a good way. Yes, Carol.
Well, that's what I'm thinking is that He's not done with us yet. You know, He's given us 39 more months. That doesn't mean that we're all going to stop putting money into that. You know, the main thing I would say is a big need is that we do need you full-time. I would put that under a big need because we need His energy and His knowledge to keep going and keep us on track. I mean, all of us together, but I really think that would be under the big need, big want, whatever you want to put it.
Yeah.
Because you know, okay, we fixed up the building and that was amazing the way it all came together. And I'm not one of those able-bodied persons that helped a lot with it, but it's just amazing. Now we're, you know, basically done with that, other than upkeep. And yeah, how do we get to the next step? We're on the threshold of something. You know, and how do we, I'm thinking prayer meetings again, where we all get together and pray like we did for when we decided about Nate and about the building.
We also used to meet before Sunday school in the morning down in the kitchen for prayer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a
And
quaint,
the attendance, you know, just dribbled away.
it's not a quaint story, but someone, I mean, it is quaint, but it's also true. Someone came up to Spurgeon and said, what do you attribute to the success here? Now, I think there's a lot of things that attributed to the numeric success. But Spurgeon said, follow me. And he took them down into the basement, into the boiler room, to the people that were praying before each service. He said, this is what explains it. Now, I think also his commitment to Scripture, his biblical preaching, the sacraments. Okay, I don't think it's just that, but anyway.
How many giving units are there?
I don't, there used to be 19.
All right, so say it's 15, I don't know.
I don't know either.
But that's not, you know, to cover a $868 deficit each month would not be that much more per giving unit to cover that deficit. I can't do math. What's 15 divided by that? Okay. No less than that, right?
Oh, but you know,
$60 or so.
So if you increase each giving unit
$58.
an average of $58 a month, we wouldn't have a deficit. Even monthly, we still have the cushion.
and you know, the thing of it is, it never was our money anyway. We have invested money in this, but it never was our money. It's all God's money, it's God's building, and now it's His ministry that we're trying to do. And according to our mission statement, according to Scripture, according to the EPC, we're supposed to be evangelizing. So, you know, we can't just lay down and die. We can't just wait for 39 months to go by and say, well, we did what we could. Now, we've done a lot of things. We've done Vacation Bible School a couple of times. We have done breakfast. We have done rummage sales. We have advertised. We have bought signs. We have had a fall conference, a spring conference, Now we're ready to have another conference. We are trying to evangelize, trying to do the ministry. And it does take some resources. So it seems like the risk would be, to me too, we're risk takers. We've never done this in the first place. Look at the risk we've taken.
Through faith.
Absolutely, and we're still operating on faith. We're still God's church. We still need to be faithful. We still need to try to get out the word. And we've done well with cyberspace. You know, we have like 719 hits on Facebook within 7 days. Now that doesn't bring any resources in.
Yeah.
But it's ministry.
Yeah.
It's reaching out. It's outreach. We have to do that. Our identity is not this building, even though it's a beautiful little building, and even though we work very hard on it. That's not our ministry. It's that intangible spreading of the word that takes practical little resources and work applied. So is this conference a way to do that? The mailing, is that a way to do that? Is that a way to get a hold of people? May I tell your Jones story? You were getting eyeglasses,
Yeah.
and the doctor says to him, well, you tell it. You remember.
Well, she said, what do you do? And I said, I'm a pastor of the Presbyterian Church here in Plain. And she says, oh, you guys did the Blomberg conference. I said, yeah. She said, there was a time in my life when I had a crisis of faith. I didn't know where to turn, and someone gave me a book by Fred Blomberg called Can You Trust the Bible, which is what he spoke on. And she said, it answered and helped me work through this crisis of faith, and so that's great. I think she came. I don't know where she
I think
goes.
she did.
I didn't want to turn her into a project, and you know.
But when we pass the bread on the water, we don't see where it goes. So often we have no idea how God used it. But aren't we expected to cast bread on the water?
We are, and that's my point here, is I think the only thing that I lean toward that seems good to me is we mustn't do what Israel did. I don't think we should turn in ourselves, hunker down out of fear of our survival. Now there's some sort of balance between that and being irresponsible, fiscally speaking. I get that. I'm not advocating going on the other end of the continuum, but I am advocating how do we find a Mars Hill to communicate our distinctives.
I'm kind of confused.
Okay?
We get all these hits on what we're putting out in the air. We have people come to our church once and never come back. I want to know why.
We could go through them one by one. There hasn't been many. We had 3 sets of visitors that have left over the issue of women elders. One went to this way, and I don't know where the other, and one went to Sunrise, and the third one, I don't know. So there's 3 visiting. One was a family of 4, one was a family of 2, and one was another family of 4 with 2 kids. Now that's an issue. That's something we don't have any control over. Okay?
And I think we had one that left because, I won't give any hints, she doesn't want the content, but more of an experiential Christianity. I just want spirit and not a whole lot of content. Which I disagree with, but that's why she didn't continue to come.
Now we've had some leave that were a part of us that have cited, I think, what I consider to be our distinctive niche here. Content-filled proclamation is not for lazy minds. It's not for people that just want to show up on Sunday and have an encouraging message. It's just not. And if I were the only one that experienced statements like, I just don't understand what you talk about half the time, then I would check out, I would leave, because I couldn't take the pressure. I don't think I could stand under that gun. Because Luther's monumental pressure, he asked himself, may I have another evening to think about this? And he was asked, Luther, are you the only one who is right? I don't think I could stand. But the fact of the matter is, there is a wealth of faithful theologians and pastors who are in agreement that the American church was sold out at the turn of the 20th century with liberalism. They've reduced Christianity down to a moralism, and we don't know what our faith is. And so when someone comes with a message of content proclamation, they just check out. It's just too much work. I don't want to do it. And so what I'll say is, I don't understand you. Now, I'm not here to say I'm the best communicator. I'm not here to say I don't have improvements that I need to make. I do. But have there some visitors come and have checked out because this isn't the Christianity that they want? Yes.
And I want to say this. We are 2 generations away from doing church like this. It's been 20 years, if not 40, 30 years, where they started the Sunrise model and the Mitchell-Berean model. This model, there's 2 generations of people that don't get this, that would walk in here and feel like they're in a completely foreign country. They're used to the rock band, whatever they do out there, or whatever they do at Mitchell-Berean. I had a gentleman that approached me this week about coming to the Bible study. He didn't show up today, but I got the distinct impression from him. He goes to worship service, but he's not getting any content. He's looking for a Bible study because he's missing. I know I should be learning something about the Bible, and I'm not. So part of our problem is time. God works in His time. We're all old and getting short of time, is I think part of the way we view things. And this may be a 10-year project. Pastor Blomberg talked about the gentleman who pastored a church faithfully for 25 years. Didn't see any growth. Saw the opposite of growth. And then all of a sudden he kept being faithful. God brought many people in. I remember Blomberg talking about it.
Yeah, and that's an argument for faithfulness. That's not an argument that we too will see those numbers increase. We don't know what God is doing. But if you're doing that which is right, then I think with proper openness and humility of changing.
I want to say one more thing and I'll shut up.
Yeah.
I miscalculated. It was a huge epiphany for me when I was in Pennsylvania, and I wanted Bible, right? And I thought you had to go be a Baptist to get Bible, and I'm not a Baptist. And then I found out, no, there's Presbyterians that believe the Bible. There's Reformed people that believe the Bible, and yet they do what I believe is true. They baptized infants. They believe in covenantal theology. They worship the way we worship, okay? With decency and in good order. I was expecting that once we set up here, you know, all these people that are between 50 and 60 years old, that I thought maybe they'd be looking for a church where the Bible is there and I don't have to go be a Baptist and get dumped. Okay? But I miscalculated. I thought there'd be more of them coming in. Kids I went to school, church with when I was a kid, at the Methodist church or at the Presbyterian church. And either they're not going to church, or they think church is not, this is not the way you do church. You do church the way they do it Lifeway, or they do it Sunrise.
Well, they're affected by the culture too. I've had an 80-year-old woman tell me, well, I'm just not worried about doctrine anymore. But to answer your question too, I do know of 2 he/she's who left because they were convicted by the sermon in the way they were living, and they wouldn't stay. They were offended and left. So, and, you know,
I agree that we are doing things correctly because we are called to do certain things. And when Carolyn said, what about this fall conference? What about the mailers? That is part of our call as evangelism. We are called to do our part and to do it faithfully. There may not be any results from that. And I think we need to be prepared that there may not be any results from that. But that is up to God, because the results are His. He is calling us to do our part. And if we don't see any growth, as long as we are doing things correctly and faithfully, then we have not failed.
well, I'm encouraged with Dr. Jones's comment about knowing that Blomberg was here. That if we do the mailing, that more people will know that something was here. And really, the session is quite concerned that we are spending efficiently and in ways that we need to spend with good stewardship of
Did
our
we get the
resources.
money for the mailer?
We haven't reached,
$225. Is that what you asked?
Yeah.
That's how much you have or how much you need?
That's how much we got last Sunday.
Oh, we need to ask again and remind people about that.
yeah, now, I'm kind of a pragmatist. I know $68 per giving unit is not, it's not unimaginable. But I also know that there's real life. And I think everyone ought to go through the end, big end, this kind of thing. That's all helpful. But I'm saying that I'm prepared to accelerate the deficit spending for the sake of our main responsibility of preaching the gospel to Goshen County.
That's the bottom line.
Now, how much, how fast, what kind of deficits are you prepared to run? And of course, a deficit is not like the government debt where you're borrowing money. It's money that we have. It's a deficit of our own cash reserve. Keep that in mind. We're not talking about deficits here in the real sense of the term. So I'm prepared to go backwards. I'm prepared to accelerate that deficit spending because I have an obligation to bring this message to Goshen County. I'm not saying that all of it needs to be thrown into advertising. We just spend money. Nate thinks if we just advertise. No, Nate doesn't think that. It's one faucet. She's been doing cartwheels back there. I don't know if she fell
No,
asleep.
it's quiet.
I'm not saying advertising's the thing that we need to spend all our money on. Here's the Alpha course by an Orthodox Anglican, an evangelical, and you could rent the room in the cities in a neutral place. Oh, we have a building, but yeah, because you don't. That's why Park Sunrise thrives, because there's a lot of people who don't want the building. So you could do an Alpha course, which is a dialogue, and it's a meal, and so on and so forth. People come and you discuss. First thing, Christianity is public truth. If it is true for anyone, it is true for everyone. If it isn't true for anyone, it isn't true for everyone. Talk. Discuss that. What does that mean to you? How do you understand that? And so this would be an outreach attempt. Some resources would be food. Some resources might be renting that facility next to the police station. Yeah.
Where's that?
Hugh had.
Our obligation here is to be careful with our resources.
Okay.
Be smart with our resources and frugal with our resources. It is not to be tight. We need to do what needs to be done. We need to do it whether we run out of money next week or next year. It's not to be tight. It's just to be wise with our money and our resources.
Yeah.
Which is, I believe, what we're doing.
Yes.
And I believe the communication needs, these kind of communication meetings need to take place every once in a while and let people know where we are and where our money situation is. As far as people walking in the door and whatnot, we're living in an age where churches have, we listened to that yesterday, Herb, that you suggested that we listen to on how the church has gotten going on for a couple of 100 years, probably.
Definitely the last 100, for sure.
Yes. So, churches have dumbed down their content, taken away their scripture to gain numbers or whatever. Recruiting process,
Yeah.
especially nowadays, you recruit. Even churches that have done all that, numbers plummet. We should expect churches that don't do those things. I don't know what we expect. If the churches that are trying to go with the world to do all these things and to get people are not getting people, what about a church that's strict like ours? We shouldn't expect people breaking down our doors to get in. The main thing is we're going to remain faithful and we're going to remain true. And what happens, happens. We're not going to dumb ourselves down. We're not going to go with the world. So we're probably going to get hit harder. It's going to take, we're not recruiting and we're not changing the way we are and who we are in order to get people.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree. I like the distinction between being tight and being frugal and being responsible. It's a good distinction. And I'm not saying to have no results orientation mentality, because you try various things, and one of the things you're going to measure is how many people walked in through that door. And that's fine. Numeric considerations are not intrinsically evil. It's mandating outcomes and determining from the outcome what you think God is doing and not doing. It's one piece of the pie. The biggest thing is, are you being faithful? So the thing that started the church growth movement, one of the persons was Bill Hybels out of Willow Creek, Illinois, out of Chicago. And he started, and it's now in excess of 35,000 people. And he's been doing this and then launched into leadership conferences, because he said that leadership conferences would bring us revival, because that's what we're lacking, are good leaders. Now, to be all fair, he wanted to talk about character, he wanted to talk about some things, but it was the focus on leadership. And the results, numeric, are there. Then he did an in-house test, survey on the basic rudiments of Christianity. And the results were depressing. He got publicly on the air and said, I've been wrong. We did this survey and most of our people don't even understand what Christianity is. It's called the seeker-sensitive church. Now, does it have to be? No. So I think hopefully he's changed it up a little bit. Oh, poor guy. Also had called on some misbehavior of recent. Okay, then there was John MacArthur. Totally not into marketing. His church is over 10,000. And he said, I don't know what to explain this success with. He said, we just came here to, I don't know, Fullerton, California, wherever he's from. And he said, I just committed to preaching the Bible. MacArthur's a great expositor, if you've never heard him. I don't agree with him on everything. But he just said, and there was, the moment. We were at the right place at the right time, and all we were committed to doing is expositing the Word, and people just flocked in. So, if we're faithful and don't water it down, God could burst these walls. It's also possible that He'll even further shrink our numbers. I don't know. But I'm not called to know. I'm called to be faithful. And that's really the heartbeat of what I think this is all about.
Well, hard times is when you're being tested to be faithful. All's going well, you're not too worried about it.
Yeah. And as the main Sunday school teacher, I want to say this. We've been doing this for 5 years.
13. Since 13.
Since 13, so
right?
going on.
Not very long.
5. I have seen you guys grow. I have grown teaching you. I have seen growth. Okay? Myself and you. Now, God's growth may not be the way we like it. That you rush in and get a 2-year degree. It's an ongoing process. This whole sanctification process is ongoing. I've seen you do wonders with the women, Carolyn, because you're using that good, solid RC Sproul curriculum. And you have come a long ways, and you're bringing those ladies that go to your class a long way. Because you put the time and effort into it. What they said, the hard work of it. You've done that, and it shows results. And I think God's blessing it. May not be in our time frame, may not be in our sense of what the numbers should be, but we are being blessed because we are being faithful.
Experiencing one of Carolyn's classes will make you really tired.
It's a mental workout.
Going back to school.
She's awful boring, isn't she?
Going back to school. Gracie says, I can't learn this. I said, yes, you can. We will. I already thought I knew it all. And then I ran into her.
You really did.
I did.
You know, there's the old adage, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and then sometimes you can't teach an old dog new tricks. An epiphany is something we often run into. It's not something we seek. You acquire knowledge through diligence and study. My kids are doing that in school right now, and it's difficult. And they're learning, and it's intentional, and they're seeing the results. But epiphany is often something, again, we stumble into. The complaints that I don't understand what you're talking about are children, including mine. I have some who just don't think church is relevant. They don't have very much of a content understanding of what Christianity is, to my shame. Okay. Some are taking off, and I'm just praising God, but there's others that it's just like any other religion. And in terms of the criticism that, I don't understand what you're talking about. In some instances, this is just sleight of hand, deception either to the listeners or self-deception or a combination of all the above. But if you open the book of Romans and just start reading the Bible, right? The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. And I ask you to explain that to me. Now, you guys are all literate. You can read and you can write. While there's some debate historically, the literacy rate, I've seen figures below 10%. I've seen a small sliver of scholarship that wants to say they had a great secondary education, but it's not grabbing hold of. Somewhere around a 10% literacy rate. And they heard this text audibly, week in and week out. People that don't know how to read and write. That might be an epiphany for you if you tend to fall along this shock encounter that, I don't get it. Are you saying that truly, or are you just saying, I don't want the effort spent? And when you look at the illiteracy rate of the Scripture people and read Romans, now I bet you they had what do we call them? Having asleep there. It's priests of the round table. I bet you those illiterate people came up after the Scripture was read and said, what does Paul mean by this? What does Paul mean by that? Let's talk, because I can't read or write. I have questions, and I bet you they talked about what was read in the Scriptures, and I bet you they sought understanding. And we have to realize that we're caught in the sea of liberalism. There is a current, an ocean current of the mind as not being relevant for church. That's why the old adage, religion is for women and children.
Can I say this a third time? I broke my promise. Nate has seen this in the literature out there, and so have I. Reformed is getting a hold in places other than right here in Goshen County, okay, with millennials and such. We haven't yet seen that here. There were 2 Reformed churches in this, and not counting the Lutheran churches, faithful, I'll give them credit, faithful Lutheran churches. But the Reformed churches is here and the one in Morrill. It's just like Kay Boston last week said, told Becky after the service, if this had been here when Marilyn and I came to town, we wouldn't be in Morrill. Now we're invested in Morrill because this wasn't here. We would have been here. And I think over time, this model that's 30, 40 years old, the seeker-sensitive, friendly thing, is going away. And there's this sort of upsurge, and I think you and I discussed that, of this desire for serious worship. You know, with the word preached and the sacraments offered each Sunday and those sorts of things. And so if we can just continue existing in time, then that can come in too.
Yes.
This is totally off this subject, but
Well,
have you all
be
been
still.
have you all been watching the reports on Blunson?
On what?
Pastor Blenson from Turkey.
Oh, yes, yes.
It's kind of exciting to watch all that. I don't know who's going to get killed first, but I think we need to pray all the time.
But you see God working in that, I mean, wasn't he released in some?
He's in house arrest.
So he's better than he was.
Yeah, they said he was one of 26 or so in a cell built for 20-some months.
And recently, Trump tweeted that if they don't release him, he's going after personal economic sanctions against whoever the current president is and whoever else, the 2 bigwigs in Turkey. He'll close their bank accounts down in the West, their personal ones. So this administration is after that issue.
Pompeo is an EPC.
Or Secretary of State. Yeah.
All right, I know it's past 12:30. Any last comments? I do have some future pointing things that I think are wise to do. Someone else might have better ideas. There'll be a different time to look at 2019. But I think we're going to have more resources for 2019 to find our Mars Hills and to throw some resources at that time, talents, and treasure. And we need to put into the hands and listening ears of people. And I don't know what else to say. That's my summary. Any
We're in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm really, thank you for positive comments.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Get more.
Well, the Lord be with us and the Lord be with you. Thank you again for the last minute announcement and your time. Appreciate that immensely.
Thank you, Geraldine.